Hello, I have Abby Combs here with me today, and I've been pronouncing her last name wrong for the last, 5 years, but that's okay because here we are, and I said it right this time. I might have said it wrong, and then we had to start over, but that's
Fine.
for us to know. And now I
Mhm.
just revealed that secret. But I'm so thrilled to be able to have her here with us. Abby actually does all the jobs that I would never want to do. If I'm if I'm being completely honest, I actually laughed because when you sign up to be a guest on the podcast, I created my very first automated thing where it tells you what's to come for the podcast. And
I was so impressed.
I was laughing thinking about Abby getting this because I'm like, she's gonna think I have it all together, but this is the first time I've ever created anything like this, and I want to hire her for all the things because it is truly like all the like when you're a creative, it's and you're also a creative. I think that you are an organized creative, but when
Yeah.
you are true, just like creative, it's really hard to get into that mindset of systems and forms and follow up and all of that stuff. It feels overwhelming, but
Mhm.
you are so good at what you do. So E Studios is her business. She is a mother of four. She is fun. She is smart. She is all good things. So what else should the listeners know about you?
That was a great intro. That's probably all they need to know. I am fun. Oh, I love Diet Coke and cheese fries. So,
Okay.
like, really, I'm down for cheese fries and
What are
any.
your favorite French fries?
Well, I don't really discriminate against French fries. I love
Okay.
them all. But if we're gonna go to like the best cheese fries, we need to go to JCW's, which is really only local to Utah. But
Oh,
you
I
get
think I've been there. Is there one like
oh
when you're going south?
yes, it's
Okay,
like right by my office.
okay, that
Like
is
I
so
could
funny.
walk
Yeah,
there.
I have been there once before.
And next time you go, you need to get cheese fries with crispy fries. So not crispy cheese, because what they do is they put the French fries through the conveyor belt twice. So they're a little crispy. So when they put the cheese on, they don't get soggy.
That
And
feels like a
just
lot.
like stick around.
It
I'm
feels
going to
like
give you
a
all the right tips.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna get the crispy cheese fries next time I'm going that direction and I
Yes,
decide to try that delicious place. That sounds amazing, actually.
it really is so good. And they have great ranch. So
How's
I
the
love
how's the soda there?
great, actually.
Also
Great.
good? Okay.
And they have caffeine-free Diet Coke. So if you want like cheese fries late at night, but you're like old
Oh,
enough where caffeine affects you after like 4 p.m.,
no.
they have
Why would
caffeine.
you ever? I don't ever understand why people want caffeine-free Diet Coke, but I love that for you because I could I can drink a Diet Coke and go to sleep. So I don't know if that's like
I love that.
that's something I should brag about or something I should be really embarrassed about.
Right, right. Maybe it's up to your doctor. But
Oh,
like hit that age where I'm like, why can't I sleep? And I'm like, I had a Diet Coke at dinner. Like that's
yeah.
and my parents. This is so sad, but
I know. It
fine.
really is we're growing older. It's fine. I take progesterone to sleep, so I think
Same.
that yeah, I think that officially makes us old.
Yes. Oh, totally. I'm like, what pills can I take tonight to sleep better? Okay, great. We're good. Yeah.
Don't tell anyone that I Googled, like, "Can I give my dog melatonin?" And turns out you actually can.
I
And
think
they
it's natural.
well, I know, I was shocked. I was like and I haven't done it yet, but I got that desperate. Like, how could I
Yeah,
give my dog melatonin? And then it was said, like, the side effect was like lethargic. And I was like, "Well, duh, isn't that the point?"
that's
Like
the point. So
like
like check.
Okay, I want to hear more about you and what you do and how you got to this place and what it has looked like for you
Yeah.
because you have a really cool story of getting into business and then also creating something from your experience that is kind of even more like your own now. And I have been fascinated by your own personal story of growth and what
Mhm.
that's looked like for you and also how it has truly bless the lives of so many people. So I'm going to
Yeah.
let you just kind of explain that the story here.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. And it's a story that I love telling because I don't get to talk about it very often. And thanks to my business, I get to talk about this part of my life more than I probably would. So, almost 7 years ago, we had a baby that passed away at birth, and we knew going into it that he wouldn't survive. We found out at about 20 weeks that he had, it's a long story, but the quick story is that he had a diaphragmatic hernia. So he had a hole in his diaphragm. And because of that, all of his abdominal organs can travel through that hole and into his chest cavity, which can all be fixed with surgery. But through that, the doctor again, the long part of the story is more in depth, but the doctor was thought through it enough to tell us that you probably should get some additional testing because something caused this, which was affirming to me that like, okay, I didn't do this to my baby, which is always your first thought. I feel like when something goes wrong while you're pregnant.
Doesn't that make you
And
feel
so,
so bad thinking that
oh
we
yeah,
actually do that thought to ourselves? Like,
oh
we not
yeah,
only just like take on the suffering of the situation, but also we try to like we don't want to take responsibility, but like for some reason we
but
feel.
why not? Yeah,
But,
like
like, have you ever had the ability to create anything inside of yourself, like, to those details of, like,
right.
"I'm gonna mess this one up or I'm gonna fix this." Like, if we
That's
had that
yeah.
power, we would, like, fix everything. So, I think it's a good reminder that we, like, don't have that power.
You know, I actually have never thought of it that way. That is really so beautiful. Where were you 7 years ago?
I'm here now.
Yes, and I'm so grateful. And I remember actually the night we found out he had the hernia, my husband had to leave for an out of town work trip, which he traveled
Oh,
quite often at that point. And we thought it was just like find out if it's a boy or girl and then head out. Found out
God.
it was a boy, which I was
Yeah.
so sad about, and then found out there were problems. And I'm like, I actually don't care if what body parts he has. I just want to make sure he's healthy. But I took my two kids, who my first two living children are 11 months apart. So that was just like kind of a growth crazy
Yes.
story in its of itself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I took them to McDonald's that night just to like get them to play in the play place. And I was like, is is the McDonald's what did I think I had too much Diet Coke? Like maybe it was the McDonald's cheeseburger. Like it's just really not good for you. Like I did this to my baby. And so that was really, really hard until I got into the specialist. And then further testing had shown, after we had an amnio, it showed that he had a genetic abnormality called
Mm.
Pallister-Killian syndrome. It's extremely, extremely rare. There's like less than 3,000 documented cases in the world.
Wow.
Um, I mean, in the last like 10 or 15, 20 years. And so through that, it was so Pallister-Killian syndrome would make him extremely handicapped. He would have never talked or crawled or walked on his own. He would have been confined to a wheelchair, most likely, extreme seizures and low muscle tone. So um, you have his genetic abnormality
Yeah.
diagnosis that has a 50% success rate as it is. And then you have his diaphragmatic hernia
Mm.
diagnosis, which has a 50% success rate as it is. And it's like the combination just really isn't viable. But there aren't enough documented cases that say with this combination, it's 100% fatal. And so I was
Mm.
not able to induce labor
Mm.
at all, ever. And I also through it all was like triple the size I was supposed to be because he wasn't swallowing. And so I was on heavy narcotics to just maintain my life through the day because I was in so much pain. I gained 75 pounds because of everything. And then
Mm.
you have the mental exhaustion and the emotional exhaustion. And it was just a lot to handle.
You're not prepared to be able to process information like this. Like, there's
Yes.
no preparation that happens until you're, like, in it, and then you're, like,
Yeah.
grasping, like, "How do I do this? What do I do?
Yes.
How do I process?" And I think naturally we go and we try to, like, make sense of it,
Yes.
and and situations like this, there will be no sense to be made,
Oh,
right? So then we
yeah.
make ourselves crazy going around in circles trying to figure out, like, was it the Diet Coke? What is like, oh,
Yes.
okay, well, this must be for this and this. We try to make sense of all these things instead of like learning, truly learning how to cope. We're forced into that.
Yes, it's so true. Because I remember, my mom referred me to a therapist, and I went to do a session with a therapist, thinking like, someone's going to tell me. No one in my life, through all the trials and all the religious studies I've ever done, and my childhood and my parents and all the amazing people in my life, no one has ever told me how to choose someone's life. I've never ever been taught like how do you choose to fight for him and hope he makes it, and then what's his life going to look like, or do you choose to let his body just pass on? Like you aren't taught that. And so
No.
you're right, we just had to figure out how to cope with the day to day. And also we had two other children and a marriage and a family and a mortgage. Like there's other things going on, but it was all consuming. And when we had first kind of found out about the severity of it, I remember an inkling saying like he's just not going to survive. Like it's going to be hell to go through this, but it will end. And then if that's kind of like quickly pushed behind your mind,
Yeah.
like, well, you can't wish for your baby to die.
Mm-mm. No.
And so going through it, we went between 20 weeks and 31 weeks. We went to like 10 different specialists and 2-hour long ultrasounds weekly, and just trying to figure out what was wrong. And he just almost kept getting more sick. And in fact, weeks before, I just wished my doctor had talked about how he had a patient who the baby didn't have a brainstem. And so that was a 100% terminal diagnosis. And I'm like, I just wish my baby was more sick, because then it would just take the choice out of it for me.
Yeah.
And through the process, we found out he really was more and more sick, that he had like 3 holes in his heart, and the hernia was so large that if he did survive, he would have to go back and have surgeries every few years to replace the mesh piece, because they don't make something that grows with a child.
Yeah.
And so just like he kept getting more and more sick. And about 30, 31 weeks, we went to our a specialist. We had to get permission after permission to see. And she said, essentially, he has this many things wrong with him, this huge long list of things that we need to fix. And he needs this many life-saving procedures, but these are only saved for babies who will probably make it. And so we actually can't even administer these procedures because he's so sick. And that was one appointment that my husband didn't make it to. And I looked at my mom and I was like, okay, let's go plan a funeral. Like, it was the most peaceful, reassuring, like I have the chills experience. Like, of course I knew that he wasn't going to make it. Of course I knew that it was just going to be hell on earth for a very long time, but that we would bury a baby. And so my water broke at 34 weeks because he was so large. I mean, he was 6 weeks early and he was 5'4", so almost, 5.5 pounds at 6 weeks early is quite large. And he looked, PKS babies are really, they look handicapped, and our baby looked pretty normal. And there's a lot of little growth experiences throughout that. I mean, I had to have a C-section, an emergency C-section actually. And I did not want a C-section because I had one with my daughter and I was so doped up. I didn't remember what was going on.
Yeah.
And then we ended up having it, but because we had a C-section and we were able to stay in the hospital for 4 days instead of 2. And they actually let us have Easton in our room with us during the day, and people could hold him. And the really a beautiful experience was, the baby is blue because he has passed.
So by the time you gave birth to him, he had already passed.
So when they pulled him out, they had to intubate him. And so when he officially passed, I don't know, but medically he passed when we pulled the intubation tube out, and he lived for about 2 hours and 15 minutes. So just long enough that the family could come in the middle of the night, and we, said a family prayer and took pictures, and then we pulled the tube out. We just didn't feel like there was no reason for him to have to hold on for that long. And so that was really, really angelic. And in fact, I remember thinking everyone should experience this. This is so spiritual and angelic. But then I was like, I actually wish this on no one. I don't want anyone to have to bury a baby. So it was really, really a beautiful experience.
I think the way that I kind of describe experiences like that is when you get like these like large scale, big picture glasses or lenses on, and they come on and you're like, wow, I've like never seen the world like this before. I've never seen myself like this before. Maybe you've never seen your husband like that before. You've never seen it where we drop all of the things that don't really matter. And in that moment when you are, I think a lot, it happens when we are saying goodbye to loved ones or we are welcoming in babies, and you kind of had an experience of both. It was like birth and death. And something happens in that where truly the lenses change on us. And so it is so hard to say like, gosh, I wish everyone could experience this. But like, I was in the room when my nephew passed, and I just remember like the desire to fight so long for the rest of my life to be able to remember how I felt. And and to remember like what was important to me, and to remember like what really truly mattered, and also like the hope that I felt even in that time of like just pure tragedy, and the goodness that you feel from other people when you're experiencing, I mean, just so many layers deep. And so it's like the worst, best experience of your life.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And knowing my personality, I'm very much a planner. I want to make sure that everyone's taken care of. And because I had a C-section, that was the one thing I did not want to have happen. I was forced. I mean, I was literally could not walk. I had to lay in bed. And I had to let everyone else serve me. And I had to just let go of this. Okay, you take a picture, then mom, then grandma, then did you get this picture? Did you get like, I was just like, let's just let this be what it is. And it's probably a common theme of my life. It I don't remember it enough, but when I do, it's like, let's just let this be what it is. In fact, we spoke before we started of like, knowing me, I would come to something like this with a script of like, okay, I want to hit these points and these talking points. And I've quickly learned and I'm reminded, especially from Easton's experience,
Yeah.
like, let's just let this be what it is.
That's the
So
most beautiful phrase, by the way. Like,
yeah,
but honestly, it's like, I think that that shows like so much trust with yourself
yeah,
when you say, let this be what it is, because all of a sudden you know that you're capable of like moving through whatever it is.
yes,
And you are okay to be able to be strong enough to navigate, to learn and to grow in the ways that the experience will teach you. But when we try to control it, it comes from this place of fear. It's this fear like
yes,
I don't know how I'm going to feel. I don't know what I am going to have to do. I don't know what this looks like. I don't know what this is supposed to look like. And so being able to like let go and surrender, like let this be what it is so incredibly powerful. I hope every single person writes that down and puts it in
yeah,
their notes and remembers that phrase, because that is the ultimate test of trust in yourself.
yeah. That's really, really interesting because there's times where we need to not rely on that almost, where it's like there are times where it's appropriate to have a plan and to know what to say and to be prepared, especially in a business setting. But there are probably more times than not where it's better to just trust that like my experience up until this hour has prepared me to go through the next hour.
Well,
And
and
just
that's where
let
the
it be
planning
that.
comes in. So even when you
Yeah.
are making a plan, you have to be really honest and clear about what actually is right now. Because a lot of people will manipulate in their mind like what the situation is right now. So the execution plan is not going to work, even if you're a planner, because you're not being real with what is. So actually, that
Yes.
phrase, what is, like, let this be what it is right now, is applicable to all situations, all
Yeah.
circumstances, but it's the next steps where, you do some planning. And maybe the planning there was like going to therapy. Maybe it was letting
Yes.
people take care of you. It was like looking at your children and noticing the ones that were there, and, and also allowing Easton to be a part of your life. I mean, there's so
Yes.
many things
Oh,
that,
yes.
things around this, but it is
Yeah.
truly like letting it be what is right now. There's a quote, a lady, actually, I listened to Oprah's Super Soul Conversation, and there was a lady that said like the biggest form of torture is arguing with what is. And
Ah,
we do it to ourselves.
oh,
So I
so
love
true.
that yeah, I can't remember her name, but you can search it up, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
I love that you made that like a conscious decision for yourself, and I can only imagine all the ways that it has served you from there.
Yeah.
So you
Yes.
have Easton and are enduring the unimaginable, and what
Yes.
happens next?
Yes. So kind of go through grief and we always will.
Mhm.
But then, so he was born in October, so October 20th. So his birthday's coming up soon. And then the following January, February, I had a friend who worked at Betty's, which is a local small business. At the time, it was very small business. And they were doing some trade shows. And I think this friend, she helped plan Easton's funeral. She was in my life for the right amount of time to get me onto the next step on the path. And she said, "Do you want to come to this trade show and help me during the trade show?" And I was like, yes. And I was so excited to have something else to do because at the time, my two bigger kids were
Yeah.
in kindergarten. So they were in school half the day. My husband was traveling. So he was gone most of the time. And I got to be at home and sit and stare at all the places that the toys should have been, and the crib and the
Mhm.
stroller and the clothes and all the things. And so there was major, major depression. Um,
So this
and
felt like an escape from your life almost for
Oh,
yeah,
totally. Yeah.
okay.
I went to the mall. I found a new outfit. But like, let's keep in mind that the trade show we went to was the hunting expo. And I do not do things outdoors very rarely, unless it's at the beach.
That's
So like the
hysterical.
hunting expo, I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing there, but I
You're also
went and
like, "I don't care.
I
Sign me
don't
up."
care.
I've
No,
never
like
been
I
more
will
excited.
sell
Yeah.
every Betty's. I scoured the website. I knew every price of every bed set.
That's
I knew what they
amazing.
were called and the features of it. Like I was so excited to have something else to do and to focus on. And so I have a picture of us at the trade show and I'm wearing like dress pants and like a blouse with like a camo trucker hat. But like
That's
I
awesome.
was just so happy. And so it was just
You
a
were
great
like I bet that booth was the highlight of the hunting trade show. You better believe it.
absolutely. You
You're
better
like,
believe it.
I don't know what this is, and I don't know if my wife's gonna like it, but I'm gonna buy it.
I'm gonna buy it. We're buying it. Yep. So it was so much fun. I loved it. I think I worked 1 or 2 days. And it was great. And then that just led to like, okay, there's a couple photo shoots. Will you come help steam beds for photo shoots? I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, I'll be there. Then there was like, okay, we're having a warehouse sale. Will you come help with that? Absolutely. Like it just was great. And I have a background. My family, we're all small business owners. And so I know what it takes to just like get your hands dirty and do what it takes. Like if you're filling customer orders and packing a box, or if you're selling, or if you're ringing someone out, or whatever you're doing, like I was running back and forth, just trying to do something for them.
Mhm.
And so the owners came to me and they're like, we want you on like payroll. Like, can you work for us? And, there's a lot of details in between that are just kind of comical, but I was like, yes, this is going to be great.
Yeah.
I'm going to work while my kids are in school. I'll work part-time. Like it was going to be great. It was a few days a week. Anyway, when I started, there were just 4 people, and soon after I started, my friend had left to be home with her kids, and so it was just the 4 of us, the 2 owners and then an office manager and me. And it was just like one day I was sending emails and posting on social media, and one day I was answering customer service emails and helping in the warehouse. Like it was a little bit of everything, and it was so amazing. I connected to these women like nothing else. They latched onto Easton's story, and just we became really close friends. And I realized that it healed a part of my heart that nothing else could have at that time.
Yeah.
Um, and Betty's will always have a piece of my heart because it's what helped me feel like a human again.
Well, and
And
how cool to be able to like experience some healing, because there is something really powerful healing with people who you know and who know you and love you already.
yeah,
But then there's also like the expectations that happen with there because you all kind of experience loss together. But there's
yeah,
something really amazing that happens when you can heal with someone who doesn't really know all the things, because
yeah,
then it's truly just about healing that piece of you when they're
yeah,
showing love and compassion and interest in that. So I love that that was something that happened for you.
yeah,
I also want to point out that when you like grow up in an entrepreneurial family and you experience like working really hard, you also notice what a big difference it makes when people are just willing to help wherever it's needed. There's
yes,
like I have a lot of employees, but there'll be some that just are so good at noticing a need and being willing to do it for whatever. Or there are some that they're like, this is my one job and I'm just going to stand here until I and do my one job. But I think it's so cool thinking about you going and just seeing all, like filling all the
yeah,
needs just
yeah.
because of the way that you learned growing up. And also like, that's such a gift to any business owner.
Yes, and I've even said like we need to find our next employee needs to be someone that can just do a little bit of everything. And
Yeah.
because to me it's so natural because I just was
Mhm.
raised that way. So
Totally.
for a long time I was like, why is this person only answering customer service emails? Why aren't they running
Yeah.
over and doing a photo shoot too? Because it's just my nature. And you'll find that I do that in most places I go. If I go to an event, I'm helping to clean up or like unpack something. Like I can't
I
just be there for
Yes,
the photos.
I feel the same.
You
Yes.
are the same way. Yes. I've seen you do that too.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
So it was such a great experience. And I was there for 3.5 years. I had another baby while I was there. And when I got pregnant with Gray, our last baby, the first thing I said, I'm bawling, I am not quitting my job. Like it was such a huge part of my life. And in
Yeah.
fact, like I hired a nanny and we bought
Mm.
a third car so the nanny could drive our other car and I could have a car to go to work. Like it cost me money to go to work, but it was so important to me. I wasn't doing it for financial benefits. I was doing it for this healing. And I was learning so much. I was just immersed into this like fast paced environment and multi-million dollars coming through like that just we were just like, okay, what's the next goal? What's the next goal?
I
So
also
it
want to
was
bring out
amazing.
a personal part of that. So
Yeah.
a lot of times, like if you go through trauma and then
Mhm.
you navigate the way through in whatever way that you do it, and you find yourself in a place that feels a little bit like you've healed yourself, it's really, really, really terrifying to remove any piece of that because
Oh. Yeah.
internally it believes that you're going to go all the way back to where you were before you were there.
Yeah.
And so just like a word of encouragement though, is like, you get to take your whole journey with you. So it
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily like the place or the work, but it was all the work that you had done. And
Yes.
so like this message is mostly for anyone listening who maybe you found yourself in a place of trauma and you've done a lot of work, or you've, nurtured relationships or whatever it might be, who that have gotten you to this next step of healing. And maybe it feels like it's time maybe to make a pivot or an adjustment or let go of something. And that fear can be paralyzing because you believe you're going to go back to where you were before that person or that place or that thing came to be. But it's actually not true. You get to take that entire experience with you, and you're going to start right there. There's like, it's
Yeah.
what's that Candyland game? It's not the slide going backwards. You are past that. And
Yes.
so you get to notice the ways that you've healed and what parts of you have grown, and you get to continue taking those with you wherever you're going next.
Yeah. You have a really amazing way of vocalizing what my heart
Mm,
was saying for years, because after I had Gray, about a year later, the company was just growing so quickly. And the whole time I was there, I wore multiple hats. We all did.
yeah,
And I
totally.
loved that. Right.
And
And
that's what happens when any business is like
right.
beginning, and
You're
then
like,
you establish, right?
right. And so at that point, Betty's was at a point where they needed specific people to do specific roles.
Mhm.
And so they had asked me to do a specific role. And I was like, wait, why would I just do one job? I'm doing 8. But they needed that one job to be full time and to be
Mhm.
focused on that one job. And I was like, well, I can't be full time because I have babies at home, and I don't want to do just one job. But I consciously knew that the business needed that
Needed
to
that. Yeah,
continue. There's
absolutely.
no
Mhm.
way that they could have been where they are today if I would have stayed in that one spot. And I also think
Mhm.
sometimes we outgrow
Mhm.
positions, business or
Absolutely.
otherwise. And
Mhm.
so I think in that moment, I couldn't quite articulate that the only person that I knew before Betty's was the woman 75 pounds heavier, like with her milk coming
Mhm.
in with no babies to nurse, that
Mhm.
was depressed and alone and had nothing to look forward to.
And you were
And so I
scared that
couldn't,
that's who you were gonna
yeah,
find when you went back home.
absolutely. So why
Mm.
would I leave? Yes, I had a baby at home and like I had children, and it would have been beautiful, and it has been. But in that moment, I was like, no, no, no. So I fought that so hard for a
Mhm.
long time. And I think God knew that it needed to be what it was for me to eventually pull out and to have the guts or the bravery to
Mhm.
say, if I am that person that's sitting at home alone and depressed, it's going to be okay. And so we made the decision to leave, and it was really beautiful on everyone's side that
Yeah.
I knew they needed it. They know they needed someone to be full time, and they had it in people that wanted to do that. And I was able to stay home. And
Also, here we go. We gotta say this. Just because you can doesn't mean you should, right?
yes,
Just
yes,
because you
like I
can,
probably could have done,
you absolutely could have, and you could have done a phenomenal job, but you
yeah,
listened to something inside of you that said, this is like not the right time or right decision or right place for you to
right,
put all your efforts. And so trusting, we're going back to that trust again, that
yeah.
you trusted, just because you could didn't mean that it was right for you.
Right. Yeah. Yep. So I think there was something in me that just knew that it served, just like that friend that served a time in my life for a small period to get me into Betty's. Then Betty served a huge part of my life that will always
Mhm.
bless me. And
Yeah.
then coming home, once I decided to stay home, that's when really East Studios started. But I did not set out to start a business.
Mm.
If we want to transition into the business side, I left Betty's, and then I had friends and people that I had met through Betty's that were like kind of asking all these marketing questions, and or I would talk about what I did at Betty's, and they were like, "Oh, I just don't understand how I can like make all the puzzle pieces fit together." And
Mhm.
I was like, "Well, where's your marketing calendar?" And they're like, "I'm sorry, what's a marketing calendar?" And I'm like, "Oh, if you don't have a calendar, then we can't do anything. So like, let me build you a calendar." And they were like, "Okay." So then I build them
Yeah.
calendar. Like, and then you're going to do your posts
So
here
cool.
and you're
Yeah.
email here. And it was great. I've been doing that for 3.5 years, and I
You're like, I'm
learned.
going to do all the jobs that you don't want to do. Go back to the beginning of this
And
episode. You're
actually,
right.
it's so fun because
Yeah.
if you ask my husband, I have a spreadsheet and a calendar for our next Disney World trip. Like I know where we're eating on Tuesday at 7. Like it's planned. So
I
that part is
can't.
so fun.
I
And it
love
just
that
becomes
part
like,
of you.
it's so natural. And the people who can like think of t-shirts designs, I'm like, could never, ever. Like that's just
This
like
is
my
hilarious.
girl.
I actually had the AC guy at my shop yesterday trying to figure out like how to better like cool the upstairs. And he was
Yeah.
looking around and all of a sudden I looked at him, I'm like, you see an airflow patterns, don't you? And he started laughing and he's like, yeah, I actually do. And I was like, that is hysterical because I see in colors and tones and patterns and
Yes.
shapes. And he sees in airflow patterns and you
Yeah.
see in like in like schedule and like productivity and
Yes.
systems. And it isn't
Yes.
that hilarious that we all see it
Yes.
in such different ways and it makes the world go round, but I'm like
Yeah.
so jealous that you see in systems and
But see, I'm so
schedule.
jealous that you see in color because I'm like, everything's black and white over here. Like everything,
Which
like I celebrate color, you know, like
I actually this is something really hilarious and my friends have made fun of me for it. Like, I hate wearing sunglasses because it dulls the color, the actual real
oh,
color of the world to me, and it's like,
yes.
its color is so true to me that I just feel like I wanna see it all
Yeah,
exactly
you
what
like
it
want to
is.
taste it.
Isn't it
Yes.
so funny? It's like Pantone colors and, like, what mixes together and the shapes and the lines and the I mean, that's how I see the
Love that
world, you
about
know?
you. Yes. Yes. And I am
So
like, okay, this is what's
like,
happening. And I
how
have
can
like
I make this, like,
calendar.
work more efficiently and
Yeah.
effectively? And I just need half of your brain.
You can have it. I want half of yours.
Okay,
But
deal.
I remember
Done.
like, I've gone to like retreats, you and I met at Susie's school and
Mhm.
I've done these different things where they're like, find out what you're good at and then you can monetize it. And to me, I never knew that I was good at this because it just
It's
is
so natural to
what
you.
I am.
Mhm.
Like it
And you
just
believe
is.
that everyone else can do it. When it's that
Right.
close
I'm
to you,
like,
you believe it's natural,
exactly. Like
but it's a
exactly how I was
gift.
raised. And then like the way that I just like can plan out like my life, just like I do the carpool schedule for cheer. My daughter's in all-star cheer. And so we have like probably 9 moms that meet at one church and we have to like, you either pick up a group and then you drop them off and you bring a group back. Like there's a lot of moving pieces. That is so fun for me. And they're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And I'm like,
You
that
can't
was
see me, but
fun.
I am just baffled. I am just shaking my head. I'm like, if there's a story problem, consider me out.
Oh, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I remember my teachers would always be like, she can solve any story problem, but like the actual math thing she can't do, but like the story problem she just gets.
I can solve any problem. I just can't solve any problem that includes like a mathematical formula.
Yes, yeah, and numbers make sort of some sense to me
That's
sometimes,
amazing. I
but
love that.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so I was just, like, at that time helping friends and families, and then,
And you're seeing this need. There's like a need.
yeah,
People need what is in your brain.
yes, and I'm like, "Okay, well, this could be fun," and, then, ironically, I think it was so I talked to my husband about like, okay, well, if I'm gonna do this and like charge, and then I should have a website and like I should have my services listed and like what does that come with? And I remember thinking at one point, like, wouldn't that be so cool if I could make $1,000 a month? Like, that's a lot of money because right at the time, my husband,
Yeah.
we live a very traditional life. He provides
Yeah.
for our family. And I was like, $1,000 extra every month, that would be so cool. And so I was like, but I need to like do all the planning, right? And have like the what I offer and
I
who
got to
I
work
am,
backwards.
my
Yeah.
branding. Yeah. But I was like, I'm not really gonna start a business. I'm just helping people. But like if I'm gonna do it, I should have a website. And he was like, no, actually just try and go make money first. And I was like, oh, I don't know about that. That feels really backwards to my actual soul. And he was like, no, just try and make money. And so I'm like, okay, fine. So I like drafted up, I had a meeting with a friend who has a manufacturing company and I drafted up like my services and at least had something. And I'm like, I'm going to charge her $1,000. Like I'm going to do everything she needs for $1,000. And I quickly learned that that's like very small amount of money for what we do and the results that people see.
Right. Yeah.
But so I started like in October-ish of 2019, but really November 1st, we're calling like our like go
Yeah.
for it, like it was happening. And on November like 5th or 6th, my husband's company completely shut down. We had no idea it was coming. And it was all within a matter of about 6 hours. So they emailed and said the FTC has sued our company. He was in seminar sales. It's very common in their industry to be sued, but they had done everything by the book. So there was really no reason for them to be sued, but they were going after every seminar
Wow.
company at the time. And so my husband called me. He's like, we've been sued. I'm not that worried, but maybe just update my resume just in case. And then that night at 10 p.m., 6 hours later, he's like, I'm on a flight home tomorrow. Our company, they've let us all go. And I'm like, What?
Excuse me, come again?
Yeah, like I'm tired. I would like to go to bed. What's going on? And so I think I had signed my first client, or maybe I had a couple small ones as well. And I just thought like, okay, well, we have enough to pay our mortgage at least. So like, we'll be fine. But like Christmas is coming and like our daughter's in competitive cheer and she travels in February to Palm Springs and like all these things. Anyway, so kind of fast forward a little bit through all of that and that stress. And he's, applying to every job and they had laid off about 500 people. And
Wow.
so around the same area, we're all with the same kind of qualifications, looking for the
Looking
same
for the
kind
same
of
job.
job.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so he's doing his thing. I'm kind of doing my thing. And he comes to me about a week or two after that happened. And if you know my husband, you know this is not like him. The man, not sure he has any feelings. I mean, he does, but he's very masculine and
I don't know your
very
husband.
not
So
in his
this is good information. Okay.
if you know him, you'll love him. He
Yeah.
is the most outgoing, charismatic man you'll ever know.
That's why he's in sales.
He's in
Yep.
sales.
Okay.
But he's like very black and white, very
Okay.
typical male behavior. And he came to me one morning and he was like, okay, this is weird. Don't make fun of me. But I had a dream and you're supposed to do this business. Like someone came and told me like, this is supposed to be a thing that you do. And so we're all in, let's go. And I was like, and I think God knew that I needed that confirmation at the time because
You needed that like validation and that encouragement from especially
yeah,
him. Yeah.
yeah. And looking back, had he not said I'm in, there would have been a ton of contention of the late hours and the trips they've had to take and the meetings. And he's had to come home from a meeting to watch the baby, or he's not a baby, he's 4.5, but we've had to juggle these responsibilities because we're building something that he's in as well. It's not just like, oh, Abby's little hobby that she makes money, which was what a lot of things were in our married life and it didn't make sense to him. He's now like, no, this is something that we're building and she needs this for her to feel like a human.
That's so good.
Yeah.
And luckily in this moment, he was able to come to you with that validation. There will be a lot of times though, when that's not the case, when people who are listening, like you have something, a desire or a wish or a dream on your heart, and maybe you've received that confirmation, like, yes, this is the right thing for me to do. And it feels really bad if you don't have that all in support with your person, your spouse or your partner, especially. But I think that whenever we receive any sort of confirmation, whether it's from ourselves or even like in this situation where it was like an extra confirmation from someone else, like that's the thing we have to cling to in order to keep moving when it's hard, when it is late nights, when it is like give and take. But I think the more that we can be like honest with what our goal, what our vision is that we are seeing and that we're feeling, and that confirmation that we have, if we're willing to share that, like it was so powerful him to share it with you, but if we have that, then are we fully sharing what we think and we believe with our significant other, that we want to be fully on board with us? Or are we just like, I'm going to keep this to myself in case it doesn't go how I want it, and so they can't fully support us because they don't have the full picture? Does that make sense?
Yes. Oh, it totally makes sense. And because it makes sense because in past years, he hasn't been all in. When we first got married, our first two babies, they're 11 months apart. I coached cheer because I had a family member who had a family member that needed help. Anyway, and I have a cheer background. I cheered in high school and in college. And I was like, oh, yes, I would love to coach cheer. Now I love to be needed. I love to help people. So that was like how it was coming through at that moment. But I would like have to get babysitters. And by the way, when you coach cheer, you don't,
You're like
and
paying
like
to
a little
coach.
league. Yeah. Like you don't make money at all. You're paying to do it.
Yeah.
So I would either drag my little kids with me or I'd get a sitter. So it was costing us money. And it was like after school hours, like not prime times. Like I would have to go to like these little league football games on the weekends. And he was so confused and it caused a lot of contention. He was like, I work so hard for our family. I'm actually leaving the state to go do work and to work. And you're like off coaching cheer. Like it just did not make sense to him. And he was supportive, but to an extent. And then even, I had like little things that I would like learn to sew. And he was like, why are we buying all this fabric? Like, you don't actually know how to sew.
But now looking back, do you see the parts of yourself that it was filling doing those
Yes.
things? Like, can you clearly identify? So I think the
Yes.
challenge is when you find things that feel like something you want to be a part of or doing, like being able to identify that and then like in that situation, ideally you would have been able to say like, I know this doesn't make sense to you, but there's a part of me that really needs to feel connected. It is something that needs to feel like I'm adding value to people's lives. There is something that makes me feel like I'm learning something new. And while you don't care about sewing, this is what it's giving me right now. And
Yes.
and
And
per
I
in a
learned
perfect
that.
world, we could learn how, we already know to say that, but that's what I would wanna teach
Right.
someone in this moment is like, maybe there's things that haven't made sense to you why they feel important, or they feel important
Mhm.
to you, but you don't know how to tell people, like, what need is it meeting for you to do those things?
Right. Right. I think we have so many outside influences that say it can qualify as value if it's this, if it looks this way, or if
If
it
it
produces
makes
much
money, I think
money.
is actually mostly
It's
the
a
the thing.
big one. Yes. Or
Mhm,
if I have a big social media following,
mhm,
then it's of value, then it's worth it.
mhm,
And like it doesn't have to be that. There are so many
mhm,
things that I realized make me feel, and I say makes me feel like a human, because sometimes
mhm.
when I'm a mom and I'm in, immersed in motherhood, I'm not really a human. I am so many other job titles that I love and embrace, but I had to learn for myself.
But
And it,
what if I wanna say it just makes you feel like Abby? Not just
yes,
a human, it
yes,
actually
it
makes
makes
you
me feel
feel
like
like the
Abby.
truest version of yourself to be able to be all those things and also be something who is doing something that you're passionate about that is, like, filling your cup.
Yes, and I think the biggest lesson for me as well, there are many times that I was so confused why I didn't love having a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. And
Mm.
sure, the outside people can say,
I
"Well,
can
they were
tell you
a
why,
2 and a
because you like to
3-year-old."
I'll tell you why, because you like to plan and you like to have structure, and when you have a
Yes,
2, 3, 4, 5-year-old, you have 0
does not
control,
happen.
all schedule is it's like you have to explain you are rational and you are capable
Yes,
and you are smart, and you have to try to teach a toddler who does not understand a single thing why it's
yes,
important, and they will push back till they turn
yes,
12, and you can take something very valuable away from them. So,
yes.
I can tell you why.
Yes, exactly, and I'm like, I'm just sitting, and we're, like, changing diapers and watching TV all
And they're
day
trying to boss you
long.
around and change your plan.
Yes, they are actually so mean to me.
But then they go to
Yes,
sleep and
and
you miss them. You're like, "Oh, I miss you, and you
I
made me laugh so
know.
hard today, and you're the best
Yes.
ever."
Yeah, and now that they're 12 and 13,
Yeah.
I can say they were the best 2 and 3-year-olds. But at the time, it was really, really hard for
Mhm.
me to accept to myself and admit to other people that motherhood wasn't 100% fulfilling.
Mm,
Because I was raised in an environment and in a home
mm,
where, that's what the plan was.
mm,
You graduate high school, go to college, you meet your spouse, 2 years later, you have babies,
mm,
and you're a mom, and that's it. And I was like, I don't feel full. I don't feel
mm,
complete. And when I had these little projects or little things I was doing, whether it made money or not, and whether whatever scale they were at, I felt like Abby. And it was more of
mhm,
a lesson for me to accept what is true to me, what feels good right here. And for so long, it was what feels good to everyone else. And it was really that way through all of those things on
mhm,
some level until a couple of years ago where we said like there are other things that just don't feel right and actually drive me further away from my divine power. And
mhm,
so what sits right, and we constantly evaluate it, and it's been really beautiful for my husband and I to experience that, and then also for our children at their ages they are, one's a teenager, one's almost a teenager, and then we have a 4.5 year old, to just say like what feels good to you.
mhm,
And we're going through this as well at 35. Like
mhm.
you will always evolve and grow to these different stages. And if we push against it, it is like really painful. And if
Yeah.
we embrace it, it still can be painful, but I don't think it's as painful.
And I wanna reword, and, like, something that you said, because I think it's something that we say a lot, and the way that we say it, I feel like it brings more guilt and shame to the situation, and it was this, like, I felt bad because I didn't feel fulfilled in being a mom.
Mhm.
And what I want to say is, what if it wasn't that you weren't fulfilled in being a mom, but you were feeling pain because you had abandoned really important parts of yourself?
Yeah.
And I think that when we go, I'm not fulfilled being a mom, then that means like, oh, I must not like love it like everyone else, or I must not be as good at it as everyone else. But
Mhm.
if we stop and we say like, oh, I feel like I have abandoned pieces of myself wherever I'm at right now, it has
Mhm.
nothing to do with with motherhood. Has
Yeah.
nothing to do with
Yeah.
whether or not you're a good mom, if you're like love being a mom, if you struggle being a mom. It has nothing to do with that because that doesn't matter. Each person's individual experience will be their own, and there's no way to gauge like in comparison to everyone else. But what happens is that there might be parts of us that we abandon when others need a lot from us. And
Yes.
it's so if we are feeling that like, maybe I don't feel like I'm fulfilled, it's what have I abandoned in myself that is really important to me that is like screaming for some attention. And
Yes.
that doesn't feel like guilt and shame. Does that can you see why that like feels
Yes.
so different?
So much. And thinking back to young Abby who had little babies,
Yeah.
I didn't know that I could actually evaluate myself
And you didn't know
and
how to protect those
consider.
pieces of yourself that really
Yes.
matter. We just offer ourselves up as sacrifice a lot of times
Yes.
when someone needs us, or especially like a small human, without protecting those little pieces of us
Right.
that make us Abby or Chelsea or you. And
Mm.
we can protect those little parts of us.
Yeah. I think just recognizing that there is someone
Mm.
right here, yourself, that needs choosing
Yeah.
is huge. And I am so grateful that the state of the world, at least in my
Mhm.
circles,
Mhm.
are so much more aware of that now
Yeah,
than 10
absolutely.
years ago. And
Mhm.
then for my daughter and for my sons too, because I think men
Mhm.
don't choose themselves sometimes. And
Mhm.
I think it can be really beautiful when we do that I mean, it's selfish in a really healthy way.
It's like
And
I think it's protective, and I think it is
yeah,
that it's protective in order to show up as the best version of yourself. It's not
yes,
like to not have to have the responsibility. It's truly to be filled so that you can overflow that goodness to other people. So
yes,
you shared how you kind of chose you in that moment of like, I can't do this job. And I also, you chose them because you knew that they needed something else. And so you get into this business, and then your husband jumps on board and he's like, okay, we're all in. And this is a few years later now. And what has that growth looked like in this moment?
yeah. There's so many growth experiences that have happened. I think anyone who has started a business or owns a business or works high up in a business realizes that almost every day there's a growth experience.
Yeah.
But there's some big ones, and then there's probably daily little ones that we go through. There's been some amazing opportunities. It's brought me closer to my husband, even that in its own unique ways. We also grew too fast last year. We had some amazing opportunities come where we grew way too fast
Yeah.
without the correct, as good as I am at systems,
Hmm.
we didn't have the best systems in place to withstand or to sustain the growth.
Mm.
And it put us in some really hard times last September where it forced us into revamping and rethinking things. And that took a real big hit, not only financially, but like to my ego, because my business is so much me and what I am and what I know, what I can provide, that it was like, it felt like a huge failure. And 4 months after, I was embarrassed and maybe in shame a little bit and crawling out of financial issues, like just so much that I had to grow from. And now a year later, I can say, well, that was so good for us. Right.
Mhm.
And
Because
even a
it
few months
forced you
after.
into yeah, it, like, forces
Yes.
you into to, like, how can we avoid this? And you probably couldn't even
Yes.
see that success was on its way to you, right? That growth.
No.
We don't always know when those, like, quick seasons of growth are gonna happen. I experienced the
Yes.
exact same thing in my business. I was just making shirts for my mom and my sister and all the things after I had had my twins, and all of a sudden I, like, had this full-blown business, and then I had 3 or 4 kids, and then all of a sudden, like, my nephew died, and it was like this whole whirlwind of all of these different things, and then all of a sudden the IRS was like, "Show me everything." Literally full compliance, show me everything from 5 years ago. From 5
Oh,
years ago in the middle of,
yeah.
twins that were 3 and a baby and a pregnancy and a death and like, "Here, show me everything." Like, highlight all your business phone calls. Do you even know your mom's phone number? I don't. I mean, I'm just like I mean,
Yeah.
right? And in that moment, like, there was exactly like what you're talking about when the growth happened and you weren't really ready for it and you didn't really
Right.
know, like, I was commingling money. I was paying my taxes. I was like filing I was being honest in my business, but I was also commingling money, which you can't do in business because I
Right.
just didn't really like I was just, I
Yes.
didn't plan on the growth, right? I didn't realize
Right.
it was going to like turn into this big thing. Then all of a sudden we're like, okay, because when you commingle your money, you have to claim all of the dollars that go into your account no matter what, unless you have like receipts for everything. But
Yeah.
I don't keep receipts for anything personal for
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
Also, it's hard for business. So then I had to choose in that moment is like, do I like figure out a way to like make all of this money back that they're going to charge me? Do I roll over and die? Do I become resentful and angry because it's not fair that I actually really did pay my taxes? I should
Yeah.
have gotten an attorney, but didn't know that part, right? But also like you either in those moments you either roll over and die, or you say, you know what, I'm going to learn from this and I'm going to be better because of this, and then I'm going to tell everyone else like,
Yes.
don't commingle your money. Like the day
Yeah.
you start making money, then you're going
Get
to
a
separate
different
that,
account.
and you're
Yeah.
going to protect that separation at all costs, right? So
Yeah.
there are massive lessons to be learned when it feels really bad, and all
Yeah.
growth isn't, it's like make sure you really want what you're asking for, because
Yeah.
you
But
don't
in the
know if
moment, you think
yeah,
you knew, like, I
but
was
you
like, well, I gotta hit a
expect,
certain number. Like, we're hitting numbers I
yeah.
never thought possible. I wanted to make $1,000 a month, and now we're dealing
Mhm.
with many thousands and tens of thousands of dollars. And I'm like, this is so cool. And I'm hiring left and right. And I
Yeah.
don't really care who I hire, just get a body in here. And like
Mhm.
that had its own challenges. So it's like in the moment, I'm like, I don't care. I've got a team of
Yeah.
7. It's great. I got an office space. Like I have, look how much we're making every month. Like
Yeah.
it was great. I was like, no, I'm choosing this for sure. But then
Mhm.
it quickly caught up with me. And I
Mhm.
remember my husband a few months before was like, just be careful, don't grow too fast. And
Mhm.
it was like, that is the most hilarious thing I've ever heard. How do you grow too fast? And he's like,
Mhm.
no, it really happens. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you're dumb. I know it doesn't. And
Yeah.
it really does. And now I tell people it's one of my thing that I'm like, you
Mhm.
can grow too fast. Like get some foundational elements in
Yeah,
place.
make sure the foundations are ready to go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you don't know, I think number one thing is, if you, most of the time you don't build the foundations because you don't really know what they are. And
I
so
was gonna
my,
say, I
yeah,
don't really know what they
no,
are.
but my
Yeah.
suggestion is find someone who can teach you what they already know, so that you don't
Yes.
miss those things that you should have, that could come back to hurt you. So it's
Yeah.
like finding a coach, or finding a course, or finding something that teaches you a step by step of what you want.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's going to be things that you're only going to be able to learn through experience. That is
Yeah.
true. That is
Yeah.
absolutely true. But I just think that's such a valuable thing, and that's actually exactly why I started coaching people, is because I was
Yeah.
like, I had to figure out so many things for myself, and it took so many years and so many things. I
Yeah.
was like, why didn't anyone tell me? And I'm like,
Yes.
like, we want to help people avoid those mistakes. We want to help people be prepared for the
Yeah.
growth. We want to help people like get those systems and the foundations in place so that they can do whatever it is that they want to do. And I think that's
Yeah.
a really valuable lesson as well.
Yes, I completely agree. I think there is a value of leaning on someone who's done it before. And then, like
Mm.
you said, I don't know because I am really good at systems, but we didn't realize that there was a little bit of gray area. And I think
Mm.
if I at the time would have hired a coach, they probably could have seen that. But
Mm.
also now, a year later, the wounds
Yeah.
have almost, I think, pretty much healed. I can say I'm so glad I was forced into that. There were some toxic things we were doing that I'm so glad I'm not a part of now.
Mm.
And it forced us into some really defined deliverables that is making it
Mm.
easier for us to be able to price people, for
That's so
them to
good.
understand what they're paying for. Like it really is to the benefit of the business. But
Mm.
when we went to Lake Powell and we were out of service for a week and we came back and it was just like everything was on fire, right? And my husband pretty much said, like, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Like, go to the office at 7 a.m., come home at 10 p.m. I don't care. I got the kids, I got dinner, I got the carpools. Like, I'll see you in 2 weeks. And I had to choose in that moment, like, I either will fix this or
Mm.
I'll fix it just enough to put a band-aid on it and then walk away,
Mm.
turn over and die,
Mm.
or I will fix this so that it will be better and we will
Mm.
never go through this again.
Yeah.
And I was actually terrified to enter September of this year because it happened in September last
Like
year.
the PTSD. Mm.
Oh, we went to Lake Powell again this year and we did have internet this year and I was like so
Yeah.
glad, but I didn't want to work. So I
Mhm.
made sure we had systems in place that I could
Yeah.
check out this week. And September was beautiful and we're
Yeah.
great. And it's really put us into a great place. And if I think about a lot of the experiences of my like most painful times, I was forced into it. I didn't choose So like the baby that we had to bury. I mean, I believe we probably did. And I'm grateful for the experience, but it wasn't that I was like, I need someone to walk me through this, someone who's done this before. I was like, I have to walk through the fire
Mhm.
and learn what I'm going to learn from it. And even through Betty's, like I had to walk through that and learn what I needed to learn from it. And I had to let September of last year be what it was.
Mhm.
And people are like, I don't know how you go through what you go through, like, especially with Easton. And I'm like, well, you have a choice. You simply have a choice to roll over and die, and figuratively or literally, or you have a choice to rise from the ashes. And it's painful and it takes a lot of rebuilding,
Mhm.
but it will build something in you that nothing else can. And let's just celebrate that growth. And if we can
Yeah.
look at the beauty of the growth, um, it really is a beautiful picture, and it makes you into who you are instead of
Abso-freaking-lutely.
shaming it. Yeah.
Well, and that's exactly what this whole podcast is about. It's all about taking time to look back and to recognize different seasons of growth, and sometimes they feel really good and sometimes they feel really bad, and sometimes they're planned and sometimes they're forced, and sometimes, I mean, it comes in all different stages, but I think the word that keeps coming to my mind is humility, to accept what is and to notice what is going on, and also being willing to like see what needs to be fixed, or see where to let go, or see how you can learn from your experiences and how you can grow and move forward. And I think that all of the experiences that you have shared today really lead to that humility and willingness to be able to learn and to grow and to fix and to change, but also like celebrate what it is that you've learned in the process. And I think that's like so valuable. So I just really appreciate you being so like um so genuine and so honest with things that were not lovely experiences, but I think they're experiences that we can all relate to in, whatever way of our lives. Like we all go through similar pain and suffering and hardships and unexpected things, but we can all learn and grow from those experiences. So I appreciate you so much.
Oh,
Okay, so I
thank
have
you
these.
so much for having me.
Yes,
I
of
loved it.
course.
And
So
I'll say that, like, knowing of your podcast and knowing that I was coming on, you start thinking, okay, when have I grown? Because everyone else has a story that's not yours. And so you're like, well, I
yeah.
haven't grown in that way, or I didn't have
Mhm.
that experience. But just switching the mindset of like, when did I grow? There
Mhm.
were just examples after examples. So it's just kind of that, like, let's be just aware
I
that,
love so much that it did that for you, because that's what I want the
yes,
podcast to do for everyone. Even if you're not on the show, like I want people to notice
yes,
the growth that they've experienced, like whether it's like from one month to the other, or like, wow, last September felt like this. I'm so grateful to see that where I'm at now. Or maybe it's this like, you know what, last year I was really feeling successful and I was feeling really happy. This year I don't feel like that. I don't want to feel how I feel right now. What
yes,
are some things that I was doing back then that really helped me feel better? And so it goes
yes,
both ways, right? There's like
yeah,
there's good and bad, but the self-reflection, that taking that time to notice in your own life, that's the important part to me. And that's exactly why I have people on here and have these conversations, so that we can all continually be growing regardless of the circumstances around us. So that's
yes,
awesome.
yes. Thank
Okay,
you.
so we got to ask the two questions. So the first one
Okay.
is something that is currently lighting your heart on fire.
Okay. Okay. Lighting my heart on fire. So I hate the cold. Really quick. I hate the cold. I love sunshine. I don't love the outdoors, but I love sunshine, love palm trees. And so I would love to have a house in Arizona. I would love to live in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Amazing. Yeah.
It's been kind of a thought for us for a few years. And I don't know that we'll ever officially move our entire family there, but we've set some goals with our business in order to be able to buy a rental property there, that we can have retreats down there. I have clients down there. We need to do content creation
Amazing.
for them. And so I'm like,
Yes.
we're doing everything that we can to try and get our business to be where it can buy something there. So there's just like, that's what's kind of lighting me on fire, is
Yes, that is
going to
incredible. I
sales
love that
department.
so much.
Yeah.
Okay, and what is something that you do to protect the peace of your soul?
I have realized I'm an introvert. I'm an
Mm,
extroverted introvert.
mhm.
And so there used to be times that I would feel really bad when I needed to like not talk to anyone because I am outgoing and I am
Yeah.
charismatic and I can entertain people. And I feel the need to help people all the time. And so to protect my own inner peace, I have to like I have to check in with myself quite a bit of like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I anxious? We have pink couches in the conference room, and I often go lay on the pink couches with the door closed and just like take a minute and or like drive home with no radio on, like just having a little bit of that quiet time and in fact communicating to my staff or my husband or my family like I need mom time or I need Abby time really helps me just like re-energize and just check in with myself, I think is the
I
biggest
relate
thing.
to that so much. Absolutely. And it can feel
Yeah.
like selfish, but it's actually
Yeah.
the most generous thing you can do for everyone else that you need to show up for. So
Yes.
I love that. Thank you so much. Abby, where can the listeners find you?
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram. It's at E_studios marketing. That's probably the best place to find me. I have a website. It's theestudios.com, but check me out on Instagram and you can DM me and we can chat about all things digital marketing or growth or babies and traveling husbands, all the things.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you.